Welcome to Charmed Life, a radio show discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm your host, Tricia Carr. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I have a couple of announcements before I welcome my amazing guest. First of all, I want to remind you all that I have spots open for my one-on-one services with either animal communication or with your intuitive mediumship for you as a person, as a human. And so you can find that on triciacarcharm.com. I've opened up some more time in my schedule to be able to do this. So I look forward to connecting with you. I have my Patreon community, patreon.com/Tricia Carr. This is a way that you can support this program if you love it, and also to engage in certain special offers that I have there, which would be some discounts on my services, as well as, for example, right now I am teaching a class that is on a lunar cycle for the next 6 more months, and it is on Universal Laws and Archangels. So go check that out at patreon.com/Tricia Carr. And one last thing, I am teaching 2 classes in December. One is online, and it is Manifesting with Magic, and this is to upgrade and enhance your spiritual toolbox to be able to do the inner work, to see the outer manifestation, different techniques, different inner work, and rituals. Ritualization is a really fantastic way that we actually experience organizing our story and allowing it to be known by ourselves and then seen in the outer world. So go check that out. I will put the link to that in the show notes here. But it is learn.lightworkerslab.com/magic. Oh gosh, never mind. I'm gonna put it in the thing. Hi, Tony Sweet. Thanks for laughing at my flobble.
Anytime.
Tony Sweet is engineering today, producing my show. And so I will put that in there, and that is in December 16th and 17th of 2018. And I'm also teaching a class locally on December 9th, 2018. So if you are local to Los Angeles, I'll be teaching in Burbank. This is starting in January. It'll be twice per month. And then the very next one will be December 9th in Burbank. So actually, the best thing for you to do is go to my website and join the newsletter. You'll be able to get all of the information there. And with all of that said, I want to welcome onto the show. She is a global alchemist, a whistleblower, an intuitive astrologist. She works internationally as an acclaimed speaker, and she presents her work worldwide. Her name is Laura Eisenhower, and she is the great-granddaughter of President Dwight David Eisenhower. She's considered to be one of North America's leading researchers on exopolitics. I'm super excited to talk about that. Alchemy, ascension, mechanics, and the galactic history. Her passion is to bring about disclosure, inspire unity consciousness, and bring us back to 0 point, unified field, the totality of our divine powers. And she's a Gaia gal like me, so I had to wear my Gaia top today. Welcome, Laura. So nice to have you on.
Great to be here. Thanks, Tricia, for having me.
And I don't know how many people who listen to Charmed Life have been following you. I think probably many have. You've been experiencing a lot of, I think would you say you've been experiencing kind of a burst in your work really being asked for and being able to, you've had an explosion in your mission onto media, right? Is that accurate? Or is it just my experience of getting to know you?
Yeah, it's been pretty consistent. I think there's more international travel lately.
Awesome,
and
I love it.
Kind of been sporadic, but I think there's a big increase in that. And yeah, I just I do an average amount of radio shows each month. Maybe 3 or 4. I try and just put out my own stuff too. So. But I think next year is going to be pretty big as far as like back-to-back events. So there is a little burst there. Which, yeah. So I'm always open.
I had a reading with Laura, and so I first want to say that if you are interested in having a really advanced astrological reading, go check out Laura's service on cosmicgaia.org. Is that the best way for people to connect with you, Laura?
Yes.
I love your website domain. I love it. And so, but in case folks are new to your work, would you mind letting folks know a little bit about your journey and the work that you're doing today?
Yes. Well, I've just always been processing a lot about what's going on the planet, even since I was a young kid, and always felt this calling and this pressure and this just curiosity, I guess you could say. So I started to do like the research on the exopolitical end of it more around, I don't know, that's always kind of been there. I would say, in the early 90s, I was already thinking about ascension and extraterrestrials and the multidimensional nature of things. And it's just kept on going, but it's taken on different forms. Mm-hmm. In 2006, I was recruited to go off planet. So that helped me to understand things that go on in the shadows. But for my whole life, it's just really been about understanding the importance of the masculine and feminine coming back together. And it sounds so basic, but it comes down to like our DNA and the earth grids and things that have not been in balance, which makes it very easy to prey upon, which is why there's these controller agendas that have put us in compromised positions so that, we don't have our power. So it's just been a lifelong pursuit of truth. And also I've been prepared for this window period, this ascension window period throughout my life, and just have really gone into the zone of putting together presentations to help people to understand what this window period really means and how it's, an initiation from the inside out. And it's something that, we have to create for ourselves more than anything.
I love that. Initiation from the inside out is just beautiful and so empowering. And it's just so the nature of, if we believe in unity and if we believe in a prime creator, then it's just logical. And like you say, it's simple, but it's simple truth, I guess, that makes it most accessible and affords us greater sovereignty if the truth is the most simplistic idea we can grasp.
Yeah, and it's so sneaky because of the programming, the ancestral patterns, mind control, social engineering, just all these different things that really stunt our growth and get in the way that we don't realize because we get so used to it that we're sort of in these sub-personalities thinking that maybe we're finding balance, but it's a big process of really connecting with your, inner self, being comfortable with your darkness, because we have to integrate all polarity, including light and dark. Mm-hmm. And it's not just masculine and feminine as in genders. It has to do with the energy circulation in our bodies. It has to do with our ability for our DNA to begin to unlock the dormant strands. And without that, balance, we stay in a very low level of consciousness. And so, it's a physical shift. It's a consciousness shift. And this is just something I think we're all kind of grappling with. Mm-hmm. And I think it's still pretty heavy out there. So it's kind of like, wow, it's 2018. It doesn't feel like maybe things are that light, but I really do feel we've come a lot farther than at least these dark controller agendas expected. I think they're all being very blindsided. There were a lot of false timelines connected to deceptive ascension pictures that, so we're really in this purging and getting, detoxifying and really seeing the truth for what it is. And as painful as that is, we wouldn't be able to get to the other side and be fully sovereign without this particular phase that we're going through.
Let me ask you, you said that in 2006 you were recruited to go off planet. So did you physically go off planet? You didn't. That's what I thought. I thought I'd heard you say that your mission for Gaia overrode any decision to agree to do that. And so then I'm sure folks are wondering, who was recruiting you, who was calling you to that, asking you to participate in a mission that would include off-planet travel?
Well, so there's a lot of whistleblowers and a lot coming out about the secret space program. There's a lot of different levels of it. There's a lot of compartmentalization, and it's been very interesting to connect the dots. The particular folks that were involved with my recruitment were connected with MJ12, and they're a group of individuals that call themselves the Aviary, like a bird aviary, and they all have code names, which are names of birds. So you got owl, you have penguin, these code names. And Chicken Little, that was a funny one. So, so basically they considered themselves a think tank and people that were investigating UFO phenomena and just any of the, stories that people were beginning to publicly share or begin to want to share, they would just sort of collect the data. But that was more of a surface role. That was more of a surface thing that they were known for, but there's much deeper layers. And if you Google the Aviary with the name John Alexander, some websites will come up and really give people an idea of what these guys are about. And it's not about pointing at who's the bad guy here, but there are dark individuals that control a certain part of it. And then there's a lot of well-intentioned people that don't think that what they're serving is harmful to the human race. Right. And I guess we all decide at the end of the day what's harmful, what's not. It made sense. I mean, it makes sense to want to colonize other planets and protect the human genome in the event of a catastrophe. But when we have superstorms and weather modification and energy weapons and things that can manipulate weather, we have to ask ourselves, what's being simulated, what's being engineered, and what's organic. And I've always felt you got to stay on this earth. Gaia is unfolding something huge, and there's no way I'm not going to be a part of it. So that was the initial thing. And then I started to read into it more and just got a lot of really bad feelings about things connected to this agenda. I mean, the secret space programs have been infiltrated, and even well-intentioned agendas have been, infiltrated. And it just was very clear it wasn't a safe move for me to make. And there's no way I would have wanted to leave this earth, because, I definitely was prepared for this window period, and it would have really gone against what I feel my calling is. So.
And so the Aviary are human, Earth humans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have, it's coincidental. I know that Corey Good works with the Blue Avians. It's coincidental. It's not related.
Not related.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
So they just, it's their code names between each other, and they're all kind of military men. They former CIA people, scientists, military guys, physicists. One of them was the science advisor to the CIA or something, Ron Pandolfi. I've already thrown names out there. And Like I said, it's not about who's who and kind of like the duality of us against them or they're bad guys. It's just there's layers, there's deeper layers that I think are hidden to even some of them.
Sure, but, absolutely. And that's all the awakening and ascension process for the individual. Yeah. Even as you said that there are well-intentioned agendas that, just like in our own lives, we have a well-intentioned agenda and it can get contaminated by something else, and that causes us to awaken. And that's all just growth, and that's all just more of the ascension process. As long as we keep orienting back to our own power, then we'll continue on our path of light.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned the ascension window period. Can you expand on that?
Well, there's something called stellar activation cycle, and it happens every 26,000 years, and it's related to the precession of the equinoxes, and just when the planetary body is in alignment with the galactic core. And basically, from the times of like the Atlantean cataclysm, the planetary body's been like thrown and not in alignment. And when we sank into this lower harmonic universe, we also separated from the Andromeda galaxy. So this window period has a lot to do with those galactic cores lining up again, which impacts our galactic chakras and impacts our DNA and starts to shift us from carbon-based to crystalline. It moves us from the just low density into the silicate matrix. Mm-hmm. And so the cells of our body, our DNA begins, to change. And it's, kind of a slow process, because if it happened too quickly, it'd shock our system too much.
Of course.
And that's why it's alchemy. So this is also a window where the sun began to move into the sign of Fiacus, which is the 13th sign, which is the only zodiac sign that's actually ruled by the ether, which is the fifth element. And ether has to do with, cosmic forces, the heavenly essence of creation, spirit, basically. So when we connect into the ether, we begin to purify our inner elements, which is earth, air, fire, water. Mm-hmm. But without the ether, contamination can set in. That's why we've been in this low density. A lot of these control agendas have wanted to keep us in this low density where it's toxic and there's, things that want to enslave us and hook us in. But we have a great opportunity in this window to connect into the ether, not just because of the zodiac thing. That's just an example of how this is happening on a cosmic level. It's not just a nice fluffy idea that, oh yeah, we're all going to, ascend. It's like, okay, it's in the stars. It's impacting the earth grids and a lot of corrections, a lot of grid workers. We're all grid workers in a lot of ways because we're connected to Gaia, but the circuitry of Gaia is changing, and these dark reversals that have caused digression are being corrected. And it's taken a lot, because there's a lot of hijacking and sabotage. So it's really good that we are where we are, even if it looks grim sometimes. The fact that a lot is being exposed, that is very shocking for people to handle. That's a huge part of the alchemy. And exactly what you said, these difficult things are pushing us to the edge so that we have no choice but to expand and grow.
Yeah. And there's detox often for that process too, along the way that happens. How long is this window that we're in? How far into it are we, and how long is it overall?
Right. Okay. So stellar activation cycle is basically considered between 2000 2017, but there's different phases of the ascension cycle. So to me, it's like 2000 to 2025. I don't think there's a way to really ever close the door, but the thing is, if we don't take advantage of what's available and we start to move into these artificial timelines, I mean, we've sort of been straddling between artificial and organic for a really long time, but there more than likely would be some sort of bifurcation. I mean, there's transhumanism, there's artificial intelligence. There's a lot of humans that are, really connecting into that and not looking at what's available. And so there's a certain point where that window's not as open and real digression can set in, where we could even lose our soul essence and become a digressed race, maybe expanded in our intellectual capacity and, technology, advanced technology. But if we don't spiritually develop, then the technology can end up being a detriment. And that's the issue with AI. So
essentially like the grays, the future grays,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So then to correct those choices, then there's not, ethics, there's abduction and the need to get the genetic information again. So we have a chance to just really steer things correctly, and get on board and find that balance between, technological advancement and also spiritual development. And that's why unity is important, sacred union, understanding our DNA, coming, into activation of the dormant strands, is something that the earth is helping us to do. So as, cosmic forces. And so humans are convinced that maybe that's not available. And so technology seems to be some people's version of ascension and moving into a more advanced civilization. And to a certain extent, yes, there will be advanced technologies, but there's a massive difference, of course, between AI and the kind that is in sync with our soul nature and the planetary elements and all that. So so the window is pretty wide, but I think just as long as people get on board and they just can make that commitment, the rest is sort of a magical flow that will guide us and help us to get there.
You mentioned,
just
sorry, go ahead.
Making a simple statement to ourselves. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's okay.
That was it.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I wanted to just digress. You mentioned the galactic chakras. Are those you're referring to the transpersonal chakras, like the stellar gateway, or they have many different names? Is that the same? The ones that are basically above the personal chakras.
Yeah, well, they're above and below. They're not in maybe locations that people think, because the 13th chakra is actually the core of the earth. And it's a much larger energy that we're connected to. So when we connect into the earth, we're actually connecting into stargates. We're connecting into, chakras beyond, the sort of energetic or the energy centers that are more located, on our physical body. It's like we know our 7 chakras all the way up to the crown, starting from the root. But the galactic, when we go into the galactic chakras, actually the 8th and 9th is a infinity spiral that goes around the head. And when we start to activate that, we start to upgrade our physical bodies, and we defy things like aging and, different things that our bodies are programmed to do, because we keep looping in this time loop and we keep coming back and trying to figure it out. And so once these activations start to happen, it corresponds also with our DNA being able to activate. And so you got 8, 9, then 10, 11, 12 is considered the avatar matrix or the avatar consciousness. And the Lyran system is actually dimensions 10, 11, 12. So our DNA holds all these different harmonic universes and all these different systems. So when we begin to open up those energy centers, we advance ourselves because our consciousness can grasp that level of, unity, wisdom and higher spiritual abilities. And so it's a rebuilding process in a lot of ways. So, this next phase has a lot to do with just moving beyond the 7. And that's usually when there's a lot of psychic attack and people feel very defeated and they think they're just messing up on their spiritual path and they can't figure it out, when actually there's a lot of forces that feel very threatened when we start to move beyond the 7, because they lose their grip. We've been looping in this, the 7, chakras. The reason is because a lot of times our 7th chakra is not in sovereignty. We give our spiritual power away. We might tune into something externalized for our spiritual path. And if we don't have that direct connect, then that energy circulation is off because we're courting something else. Our energy center is going towards somebody else to give us that information. And so we just have to like really recognize what is spirituality. It's, sovereignty, it's connection, it's integrity. It's walking the talk, and, all sorts of amazing things happen to us when we can just give ourselves permission. But there's a lot of fear that we've been taught about that.
When I recently taught an animal communication class, and while as I go into a lesson, I try to go ahead and clear my previous learning, to be open to whatever is new. And so before I was going to teach the lesson to my students about what the death or transition process for animals, and is it exactly the same as humans, or is there any distinction? And what I was actually shown, the information that was essentially I channeled, was that animals go down when they dismiss the physical form, when the consciousness dismisses the physical form, that consciousness goes down into what you're saying is the third. I hadn't heard of it referred to as the 13th chakra. The way that I interpreted it at the time was an earth portal, or the earth portal. That was how I was interpreting it. And then they are essentially the consciousness is cleansed of the disillusion, and most of which is created by humans, of this, and essentially like laundered or cleaned, and then it continues along its path. So have you heard this, or have you experienced this, or how does that land with you, that information that I received?
Right. Well, I would say the 13th, it's a gate, more like a stargate, but our 13th chakra connects into it. So we have an energy center that connects us into it. So when we align with nature.
Do you mean the Earth Star chakra, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the Earth Star chakra connecting to the Gaia's main chakra, basically.
Chakras and stargates are very similar. I mean, it's like energy centers and portal, energies. So I would, agree with that. Right when you said that, I had a very similar picture that what you described. That energy has not been available to the planet, though, in the way that it is now for quite a long time. And if we look at ritual abuse and things that feed dark systems to siphon our energy and steal our energy, now that this energy is anchored back into the earth, it's going to be a lot easier to break free of some of those dark cycles, or just some of the stuff in the past. It's kind of like, why now are we ascending, or have this opportunity? Why not before?
Sure.
So I think, like the animal kingdom has been very much the regenerative power of nature, and it just kind of like it's sort of like when we see perennial flowers, it's like the whole process of growth, decay, compost, regrowth, bloom, it's just similar, as souls, but we're kind of like all over the place. And I think there's certain, animals like the cetaceans, the whales, and the dolphins, they're like guardian founder races and have like a whole kind of ET thing going on.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I totally was feeling what you said, and just being purified in the earth energies. Yeah, just really feels resonant.
And you mentioned the cetaceans, which I love. I also teach, and I work with and teach about nature elemental spirits, the nature spirits. And I teach, one of the lessons I teach would include the cetaceans, dolphins, and whales, but they're kind of in the same category for me as dragons and unicorns. Those being ascended animals. All of them, I either call them ultra-dimensionals, or not ultra-dimensional, ultra elementals, or ascended animals. And, of course, the cetaceans being ascended animals who are also physicalized, and they stay in this dimension. And often I've had, when I'm connecting with someone else's timeline, or soul history, and I've seen the cetaceans of times maybe Atlantean or Lemurian, and the way that they were very bioluminescent, and there were many, many more different varieties of their physicality, being much more colorful. And it's so interesting to me because they're kind of shades now, to be able to put their consciousness, their soul advancement into a physical form on this planet it pales in comparison to the visions I've had of really kind of like neon colored, that can sort of fly, some of them, and really remarkable. Have you connected with some of that history of cetaceans, or how do you actually, better question, do you connect with nature elementals, the elemental spirits or elemental guides?
Oh, definitely. Especially, yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time in the wilderness. My background's actually wilderness expedition leadership. And I did a lot of work. I went to a clairvoyant institute, so I was in a state of meditation a lot of the time. And Even one person pointed out, they said, you don't really need to be around humans. You could go off and just enter a whole nother dimension, but you're here just kind of working. And I think that's the case for a lot of us. We can really like slip into a completely different dimension, and something kind of brings us back and anchors and grounds us here so that we can do work and be of service. But I've always connected with the fairy kingdoms and the mermaids, all the mystical realms, and just recall a lot of different past lives. I had a lot of different past lives read of, being in those realms, and, it's still a part of who we are. It's just really easy for that stuff to shut down, waking up in this matrix every day. But I've always connected into that. And
what do you think their position is in all of this, in the ascension? How are they helping us, or what does their guardianship look like to you?
Well, I think a lot of people have, guides that, I talked to somebody yesterday who had a unicorn guide, spirit guide. I think they just are helping to guide us home into our divinity and into the magic. That's really who we are. Right. And when we look at the advanced civilizations and just how we used to interact with nature, we used to be so close with nature that, nature and animals would help us with things. And there's like a mutual service towards each other, and if you look at some of the artwork of like, goddess, Susan Bowden, or I hope I got her name right, but, where the animal spirits, which indigenous cultures understood, we could like shapeshift into, different animals. We're so incredibly close to nature. So I think, that role, just even the animal kingdom or just the elementals and, those different mystical realms, I think they're just guiding us to the truth and guiding us to the core essence of who we are and what we're really made of. And that's why it's really important that children are just really listened to and heard, because, children tend to just be, of course, very tapped into that world. Yeah. And it's kind of beaten out of all of us. Yeah. So I would say we all, have a connection with that. And I think I know that's what we're returning to. That's what this ascension is about. We're lifting the veils also between life and death. When we can see the totality of our multidimensional bodies, all these creatures, all these mystical realms are absolutely real.
Absolutely.
And,
Can I ask you about to expand upon transhumanism? Who are these and what are these? Is this having to do? You were mentioning it, I think, in relation to the Zeta Reticula, or is that part of it, or is it more of the other parts of Galactic, the Dracos and the reptilians and whatnot?
Well, the Dracos seem to be the race that's most connected with AI, and they have enslaved the Greys. They've worked on kind of engineering and manipulating the human vessel to, in a way, I guess, serve it and be a food source. And
very much like the film The Matrix. It was a fantastic metaphor, albeit a bit more physicalized the way it was demonstrated in the film.
Yeah, so it's all like an imitation of what we have, and it's like a simulated reality that's being handed back to us to really separate us from the original imprint. It's to give us, an imitation version that just pulls us out of ourselves even more and creates sort of this, false reality. And so there are very advanced technologies that look very helpful, but they have to be in the right hands.
Sure. Yep. Any tool, right? Any tool needs to be in the right hands with the right aligned intention. Yeah.
And there's supposedly positive AI that is in place as a safeguard in case certain things go too far. There's a lot of things in place just in case, because many different groups are have really set it up that we're not going to be destroyed. So I'm not so much an expert in the transhumanism looking future as much as I do know that most of these dark technologies are running off of our energy, and they siphon energy and then they send it off planet to something called wormwood, and the whole kind of Nibiru thing is connected with that. And also what we see on the moon, the artificial aspects of the moon and these different bases off planet and all these different satellites and all this, so there is sort of a simulated, reality that we can easily get, caught up in. And there is a very real timeline. And I would say it's connected to the Dracos and the Zetas. There's, either service to self or service to others. Right. And there's some Greys that are really trying to help and assist us because they see what happened down the timeline. Then there's the hybrid programs where the healed Zetas are called Esasani. And, these hybrids that are coming back are supposedly, they've resolved the Orion Wars and the duality that came from that and the vulnerability to being enslaved by this Draco empire. There's a lot of different things that have been put in place to heal it, because we've already, in a sense, experienced those future timelines.
Yeah.
So if we can just understand that it's already a part of our makeup, we can begin to embrace it. But there's a lot of time travel going on and a lot of things that are trying to make corrections and time travel going on in order to trip things up. And I know it's a lot for people to wrap their heads around, and it's hard to kind of like visualize what that all looks like. But yeah.
It's better if when we are able to expand out and realize that time travel isn't something that is done with the physical body of the human, at least not necessarily. And so to expand out to that multidimensional perspective, then I think that helps us to take it in a little bit, and then you have to release it, obviously, in order to continue to figure out how to, brush your teeth and stuff, and that's fine. Now, you mentioned the SSANI, and you also mentioned the hybrid program. I was just curious because you're talking about false timelines, and it is the hybrid program leading to the healed grays, which would be the SSANI. Is that timeline a false timeline, or just a future timeline that we can alchemize and essentially the way that, not necessarily experience it directly again? Does my question make sense to you? Basically, is it a false timeline, the hybrid program? Is that a false timeline that was implanted, or is it a true healing timeline that we are experiencing or could experience?
Well, I've always had red flags about hybridization programs.
You've had red flags about it?
Never. Oh, I've always had red flags about it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when I look at what's happened, to the species,
mm-hmm.
And how they basically were considered a dying race, and they had to rely on technology and abductions in order to heal their genetics. It's like part of it has also been using women to breed with.
Mm-hmm.
And I always had red flags about it because it never seemed, done in a very, kind of way. But I figure these people must have agreements.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them feel really, really happy about it. I don't know if they have false implants. I'm very wary about hybridization programs. So I can't say for sure, is it an artificial timeline? I don't really resonate with it, but if it's going to help to repair the digression, and it's not going to seek to take over the human, and it's going to allow human sovereignty, then great. But the minute that goes out the window and something wants to, kind of take over, because there's a lot of ET agendas that are very controlling, that want to basically take over the earth and take over humans, which could also be, very similar to transhumanism. I have to say that I kind of put it at arm's length and I have an open mind to it, but
mm-hmm.
I exercise discernment. I'm not just going to be like, woo, okay. I feel really good about the SSANI and what I've read, and some of the people that have gone through these, breeding programs, or have a lot of different star babies out there, and they're saying, oh, they're all coming back to Earth. But I guess I'm just one of those people that just feel like we have enough with the Earth and with what we're already made of to be able to advance ourselves. And are we really in that bad of shape that this is necessary? But I can't speak for it because I'm not one of those people that are participating in the hybrid programs, but just out of unity consciousness, I just hold space for it with the hopes that it's going to be a good thing, because there's really no way to stop it.
Yeah.
And it might be a different timeline. Maybe it's not something we're going to experience.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's something to get things, back and on track.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe it'll help the indigo and crystal kids that are born to be activated, because there's plenty of advanced children being born every day, but they're the ones that are being projected upon and
mm-hmm.
medicated for no good reason. And it's like, I just feel like we have enough to work with what we've got.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's a necessary thing, then I hope it's for the positive.
I appreciate that.
And protects you.
I appreciate that perspective a lot. And I just appreciate how you don't declare anything absolute, and just because you never, that is when we stop learning, and that is when we stop growing. Have you connected with Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar and SSANI?
I've seen him talk maybe once or twice.
Okay.
I don't really follow him.
Oh, he's going to be on my show next year. Yeah. So that's really, thank you for answering all of that. But if I can, let's talk about when you're talking about activating the galactic chakras, and is this directly correlated to also activating the dormant strands of DNA?
They're connected.
Okay, so very connected. All right, cool. Because that's basically those portals. Those chakra portals are just connected to the grid of our DNA, essentially, right?
Yeah. So, when we think of like consciousness, expanded consciousness is going to help us to be more advanced. It's going to help our minds to reach higher levels of intelligence. And so one kind of feeds the other. If the energy is circulating then the physical is going to catch up with it. And so that alters our DNA. I mean, there's been seals and frequency fences put in our DNA that have made that very difficult. And, things like implants and frequency distortions that can really interrupt that process. But when the energy is flowing, I really just, it starts to rebuild the DNA. The nucleic acids in our DNA are elemental. They're earth, air, fire, water. And so now with the ether available, it's able to actually clear even genetic damage and help advance our DNA. So we have to just, know also that all the earth grids are based on earth, air, fire, water, masculine and feminine, electric and magnetic. So we are a living replica of the Gaia circuitry. But with this overlay of the matrix energies, we just walk around very dumbed down and very much in a trance and just living through what we see on the television. So being awake is just knowing that that's not a good route.
Right.
That's like turn off get rid of that thing.
Yes, go outside. And, I actually can experience nature inside a lot just because I have cats. And I just place them upon me. Constantly just under a pile of cats really helps me to connect with nature.
They turn at 432 hertz.
I know.
Yeah.
I swear sometimes it's even higher, though. So this morning...
It's not a fixed...
Yes. So deep. And then also, different way, working with herbs, you could do that inside your home if it's too cold or too hot to be outside. There are different ways that we can experience nature without actually having to, be in inclement weather. Yeah. Let's talk about
completely, yeah.
Can we talk about the guardian races that would be helping us? Are the guardian races of ETs, are there any that we are known that are explicitly included or disincluded? So like definitely there are no Dracos who are part of guardian races that are helping us, or you know what I mean? Like, or it certainly is Pleiadians or something along those lines.
Well, there's like blue dragon energy from Andromeda, and they're connected to the Aquafarians, which went extinct. They were once able to occupy the Earth realm until the electrical wars. The electrical wars happened after we sank into this lower harmonic universe. And basically it was a battle between different ET groups and whether or not they wanted to reseed humans, and things got real nasty, and it almost, destroyed the Earth. And then there were new seedings. So some of those energies retreated, weren't here. Now they're able to come back. So there's the Crystal Star hosting the Aurora, which Lisa Renee talks about, and they're Andromedan, and they're part of the hosting of the Ascension timeline. So the Ascension timeline supposedly switched over in 2009, 2010 to the goddess frequency, which has to do with the planetary consciousness and this realignment with the galactic course. So a lot of the guardian groups have been able to have much stronger of a presence. And so a lot of people that are holding these higher codes are also being activated. So we have a lot of, the crystal and indigo energies, and, the angelic humans is pretty much all of us. So it's not like a higher race as much as they're just activators. They just came in more advanced to be able to activate other people because we all have the same potential in our DNA. Some do have extra strands of DNA. And so anyway, so that's Orifim consciousness. And it's connected to all three founder groups, the guardian groups. And their vibration is gold, magenta, and Blu-ray. The Blu-ray consciousness, though, is connected to the mother. And so when we look at it, like the founder races, they're like aspects of the Trinity. They're groups that emerge from like the divine Trinity of mother, father, and then Christ Sophia imprint, son and daughter. And when we look at certain religions, it's very masculinized, and we don't really hear about the mother much except for through idols and figures like Mary. But we've lost the true goddess history and the true origins of how this planetary body came about. Because when we sank into this lower harmonic universe, the mother energy morphed into the planet and wasn't able to remain. So these groups have been, trying to be protectors, the Melchizedek lines, of the ascension timeline, but they got infiltrated, became patriarchal. So so the guardian groups, some end up coming and volunteering, and I'm sure others don't. But the Draco energy just seems to be a very digressed form of the dragon.
Okay.
And we're here kind of like working on healing that through Kundalini awakening and integrating, love and our sexual energy so that they're not so divided, because the Draco is vampiric in a lot of ways. I mean, these technologies are feeding. They feed on our fear. They feed on our anxiety. So if they were truly whole and in their guardian embodiments, they wouldn't need us to feed on. And so they're fallen groups that I feel digressed into a Draco form. Some say they're from another universe. So if in this free will universe, the masculine and feminine differentiated to the point of, imbalance, that, more than likely opened up a portal to these warring races coming in, these aggressive races. Cause that's kind of what happens in our own lives when we're not in balance. We attract parasites, we attract all sorts of things to ourselves if we're not in balance.
True. Right. So
when we're balanced and whole, we're very shielded. So
yes. Oh yeah. We sometimes, as very sensitive people or empathic people, then we will, when that empathic nature is turned inside out, it's essentially like getting an autoimmune disease of your emotional body, and then you tend to get an autoimmune disease in your physical body. That's just, as above, so below.
Yeah.
Can I ask you can we talk about the David Wilcock departing from Gaia Network? And is it true? Did you break the letter that kind of exposed some of his? Did that come out on your Facebook? Did I read that correctly somewhere?
It was already out, and I got a lot of encouragement from, because I'm in touch with everybody.
Sure.
And so it was so funny because the day that came out, I'm talking to this person over here, this person over there, and really being pushed to share it. And even somebody, close to David, which I'm protecting the name, said, okay, well, it's being spread everywhere. So if you share it, just, put in a good word for us, kind of thing. Or him. I don't want to, put too much information on this, but okay. So anyway, I put it out there, and then like 10, 15 minutes later, maybe it was a little bit longer, I said, I just don't feel right about sharing this. It just feels, incredibly personal. And unless I talk to David, just between him and I, if I don't have his permission, I don't want to do this.
I got it. Okay.
But I thought it was already, the person I was talking to says it's pretty much, going to go viral. So it doesn't make a difference. And, maybe it was purposely leaked because it's saying all this like really important stuff. And I was just caught in the middle of it all. I'm like, you know what? I just don't want to participate. But somebody picked up on the fact that I had posted it and put it on Reddit and said, Laura Eisenhower just, put this out there. And so anyway, I saw David at Dimensions of Disclosure, and he was just like, you know what? It's no big deal. He's like, you really handle it well. I know you had my back. And every interview I've done, I always have his back, and I really respect him. And and I apologize because, unless I hear it from him, I didn't feel it was a good move.
Oh, I was just curious. I mean, I didn't know if...
Yeah, I took it down and boom.
Yeah, but they caught the virus caught from you having it up for just a few minutes. It's kind of amazing that it got attributed to you.
It was leaked in other places. There was a video put out where there was a woman who was actually reading the letter. And so that was out on video, and it was sent to a whole bunch of people. But, I was like, I don't want to be one of the, first two, unless it's going to like be a good thing, then it's not a bad thing to post. But I think it's something that deserves to have permission directly from the source.
Of course.
But he's not upset with me at all. So that's a relief.
I didn't even imagine that he was. I was just curious about what that.
Oh, yeah.
Can I just ask you, like, he mentions in there that they are that Gaia has a Luciferian agenda. Is that something that resonates with you generally, or is it, obviously just taking David's? I'm not refuting David's word. He has a lot more insight about that than anyone.
I don't know Gaia enough to be able to say.
You don't have a feeling about it one way specifically, yeah.
I think he was just saying that the show Advanced Civilizations had some sort of symbology or references to Luciferianism that was really not in alignment with his message.
Got it.
But I don't feel that he witnessed anything like any ritual abuse or any pedophilia. But there were some, things that were pretty shady that other people witnessed. And then when we look at the gem drops, the Gaia employee movement, and what they were saying, and who even knows who that group of people is. They never came forward, but it just seems like there was definitely, shady stuff being called out, and there was something just not right in that organization. But there's no real accusations, and nobody has ever come to me personally and said that they saw something like a Luciferian, or satanic ritual type thing, or any pedophilia. But again, I've heard some shady things though. Just
it could be ignorance. It could be again, some of those areas where it's a positive agenda that's being infiltrated and asking for awakening. Who knows? Yeah,
exactly. And nobody really knows who's who. Who brought in the shadiness, and people have their opinions. But I tend to just kind of like give the benefit of the doubt, or just kind of keep it at arm's length.
Sure.
I've never really worked for them, and but yeah, unless I see it myself, there's not a whole lot I can say. And I think David was just pointing out, just feeling that vibe.
Yeah.
And I think that's what was in the letter, but never heard anything beyond just the symbolism and references, and maybe a few words coming from some of the organizers about Luciferianism that led them to believe that maybe they were involved. Gaia in the, but yeah, I don't have any direct quotes.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have just a few minutes left, and I would love to end on talking about how to upgrade and how to integrate polarity, how to actually advance the human vessel so that we can help to foster, the whole planetary ascension. And what is your advice for folks to be able to connect with their mission the way that you have, to step into it more profoundly and to upgrade that human vessel?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important to, clear our creative channels and energies of things that we don't want, belief systems that don't serve us, fears about the future, maybe, something coming down the timeline that we don't want to see happen. I mean, it's important to be prepared and to have discernment and to be aware, but we're powerful creative beings. We have to understand that we've been taught to externalize everything and work from the outside in instead of the inside out. So we just really need to be clear with our intentions and work with our creative energy to, manifest, things that are going to assist us. The food we eat, we need to have clean food. We need to take good care of our physical vessel. We have to understand that things are happening on a cosmic and earthly level, and we need to be conduits. We need to be able to receive it. We need to be able to be in alignment with this flow of energy and let the magic, kind of happen. But distractions and propaganda or other people's projections can get in the way. And, if we're too plugged into the electronics too, that can get in the way. So we just have to, step back and be willing to detox emotionally, psychically, physically, mentally, and, look at it like, you're purifying your inner elements. What's the quality of your water element? What's the quality of your air? Are you able to think for yourself? You give your power away, like check in with your own energy and how much are you compromising in your life? Are you doing something that makes you feel good? Do you feel like you are answering to a deeper calling? So a lot of it for me is just assessing everything and just paying attention and just doing, the inner work as much as possible every time it's necessary. And I use astrology as a tool. So I help people to understand their map and what kind of patterning they're working with to kind of help guide them to these forces, these greater planetary forces that are the great activators, which is Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. Those are the planets that help us to advance, and our personal planets need to align with those. And if they're not, we can feel like we're breaking down. We might feel like we're going crazy. We might feel like we're dying. So these are all powerful forces of initiation, though. If we can learn to work with them, it can guide us to the next level. So I like that as a tool.
I love that. Yeah, and there are many tools. Astrology is one, and many tools that the one thing that actually excites you a lot to be able to help you to do that inner work. It's actually, like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm doing a class to kind of look at some of those things. Not astrology, because astrology is such a discipline. It's so profound. I couldn't possibly tackle that in alignment with looking at other tools too. Like, it's a lifetime of work, isn't it? Understanding our stars.
Yeah, it's, once you get over a certain hump, though, it flows a lot easier.
That makes sense, yeah.
It looks a lot more complicated than it is, because believe me, if I can do it, most people can do it. It's not like I speak a ton of languages. So it's the one language that I do get, but it's not too complicated, but it never ends. There's always more to learn. Mm-hmm. So it's a lifelong thing because there's so many different dimensions. There's a lot of different types of charts one can read. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of asteroids one can include. So it never ends. It never ends. The education connected with astrology.
Final question. I want to ask you about, I believe I've heard you say that your great-grandfather, Eisenhower, the president, he was president. He's a former president. He's passed now. But he was actually coming to you as a child. Is this right? As a guide? As an activator?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I've always had a real close connection with him that was just very interesting. Mm. And a lot of different psychic people have picked up on it. Even before I used the name, when I went to the Clairvoyant Institute, when I walked in the room and spent a little time there, they said that Eisenhower was in the house.
And you weren't even using that family name.
No, I'm like, oh, by the way. And they're like, yeah, he's right there. He's guiding you and he's your spirit guide. And they said I was his spirit guide before. And when he was president, I was like, really? Okay, well, I take that with a grain of salt. Who knows? But we just seem to have this closeness and just a shared vision and a similar mission. And, deep down, I think we all kind of share in it. We want unity consciousness. We want to heal the earth. We want to advance together and recognize each other as equals, but, and understand too, that oneness is diversity and harmony, and it's okay to be different. Yes. And really, like we both definitely want to deconstruct the governmental hierarchy model. I know that one of my favorite quotes from him is, people want peace so bad that the governments better get out of the way and let them have it.
That's beautiful. I love it. Well, they can't. The dark cannot comprehend the light. That's just true. And so that's all we have to do is cultivate our own light, and we win.
Yes. And and what I like to say a lot is we win the war within. It's a war on consciousness. We have to just harness our creative power and remember who we are, stay in alignment, be authentic, just be true to yourself. And you've done the heavy. Just that alone is a huge breakthrough. Yeah. And it's difficult for people, but it really can be that simple.
Yes. Wow. This has been just amazing. Thank you so much. Can you tell folks how they can get in touch with you again?
Yes. My website is cosmicgaia.org. You can also find me on Facebook, Laura Eisenhower. And that's pretty much it.
Get a reading with Laura. It's amazing. And go check out all of the work that she's doing. So much information, so very educational. Laura, I'm so very honored to have connected with you. And if you ever want to come back on, if you have anything you want to discuss, open door. I would love to have you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed being on, and thank you again. And thanks for all that you're doing. And this is a really great show. And it's really awesome conversation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your work. And thank you everyone for tuning in. I will see you again next week. Next week we have on David G., meditation teacher. And thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.